Okay, so picture this. You're testing your brand new automated workflow locally in a notebook. It hits a capture protected step, you run your script, and boom, it works flawlessly on the first try. You deploy it, feeling pretty great about yourself. But then, it runs completely unattended in production as a background job, and the whole thing just falls apart. The demo works, but production totally fails. It's incredibly frustrating, right?
So why does this happen so often? Why do unattended Captcha jobs just crash and burn? Well, the core problem is that background jobs are basically running blind. There's no human sitting there watching the terminal, ready to intervene if something goes sideways. If a background tool, like a Defer.run job, hits a Captcha-protected form or portal, it needs a really strict, highly structured way to solve that challenge and move on safely. Without a solid production checklist, these unattended jobs fail. They get caught in endless polling loops, they submit bad inputs, or they run into session mismatches that you'd literally never see coming during your local testing.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We're breaking down an absolutely essential guide for automation and DevOps teams. We're going to build a comprehensive production checklist for calling CaptchaAI from a Defer.run job. The goal here is simple. We want to transition your workflow from a fragile, happy path demo into a bulletproof, enterprise-grade automated solver, one that's reliable, easy to observe, and simple for the next developer to maintain. Here is our roadmap for getting there. First, we'll cover scope and safety. Then we'll look at inputs and API decisions. After that, we'll tackle polling and retries, dive into preserving session context, and finally, wrap up with measuring true job success. All right, step 1, scope and safety first. We really need to define the boundaries of your Defer.run job. Listen, the absolute foundation of safe automation starts right here. Before you even think about writing a single line of code, you have to establish exactly what you are permitted to do. You must confirm authorized use. This workflow should only involve an app you actually own, a workflow specifically authorized by a client, an approved QA testing environment, or an explicitly contracted space. These automation tools are incredibly powerful, but we are never using them to circumvent third-party protections without an explicit agreement. Safety and compliance always come first. Once you've got the green light on authorization, you have to define the job's scope. Your Defer.job can't be a hidden black box. You need to treat it like a strict state machine. A well-architected job has to answer 4 basic questions for you. What exactly did the job receive? What external step did it perform? What result did it actually produce? And if things go off the rails, where exactly did it fail? It needs crystal clear boundaries and defined exit criteria. Moving on to Section 2, Inputs and API Decisions. Basically, garbage in equals false debugging trails out. You know, it's wild, but most Captcha workflow failures actually start before a solve request is even sent to the provider. The crucial step here is verifying your exact required inputs. Before you submit that solve request, you need to inspect the live page or network call and pull only the values the Captcha actually requires. Usually, we're talking about the Captcha method, the site key, the page URL, an action value, and maybe an optional proxy. Do not guess these. And please, do not store unnecessary page data. Hoarding a bunch of extra fields just creates false debugging paths, and it makes your code an absolute nightmare to maintain later on. Now here's a massive trap a lot of us fall into. We have to distinguish between a completed HTTP request and a successful Captcha task. They are not the same thing. Transport layer success literally just means the API received your message. It does not mean your actual task was accepted. You have to treat the API status as a hard decision point. If CaptchaAI returns a non-success status, your job shouldn't just blindly keep pushing forward. It needs to stop, log the response safely, surface the issue to your monitoring channels, and return a genuinely useful failure reason. Okay, Section 3, polling and retries. We've got to prevent the infamous infinite loop trap. Because solving a Captcha isn't instantaneous, these workflows generally rely on a submit and poll pattern. But your Defer.run job should absolutely never, ever poll forever. Endless polling silently blocks your queues. It wastes system resources, drives up your costs, and it completely hides whatever the real cause of the failure is. To fix this, use a precise, controlled pattern. First up, wait 15 seconds before the very first poll. Just give the solver time to actually do its job. Second, poll every 5 seconds after that. And third, put a hard cap on it. Stop at 120 seconds maximum per task. This perfectly balances getting a fast result without just spamming the system with noise. Hand in hand with polling is your retry budget. Look, retries are a great tool for a temporary network blip, but they're absolutely not a crutch for a fundamentally broken setup. You want to cap your retries at 3 attempts using an exponential backoff, and make sure you log every single terminal failure.
But take a really close look at that do not retry list. If you have a bad API key, or you're missing parameters, or you have a zero balance error, retrying is not going to magically fix those. An infinite retry loop on a bad parameter is just burning through your resources for no reason. Stop the job and go fix the input. Step 4. Preserving session context, or why perfectly valid solved tokens get rejected. This concept right here explains probably the most frustrating hurdle developers face. A solved token is rarely just standalone. It's almost always tied directly to the specific session that triggered the challenge in the first place. We're talking about the browser context, the HTTP client state, the cookie jar, the IP context. If you get a totally valid token from CaptchaAI, but then you try to apply it using a brand new HTTP client or a completely different session, the downstream verification is just going to reject it. The system is essentially saying, hey, I don't recognize the session that's handing me this token. If the context doesn't match, that token is entirely useless.
Finally, Section 5, measuring true job success, because solver success absolutely does not equal workflow success.
Check out this comparison. Solver success just means CaptchaAI returned a token to you. Job success means your downstream workflow actually accepted that token and finished its task. We have to track the critical difference between the solver working and your job actually completing. This really reinforces that separation of concerns we talked about. If your dashboard shows that solver success is super high, but your overall job success is low, well, now you know exactly where the problem is. You almost certainly have a session context issue, or you're applying the token wrong. Tracking these two things separately will save you hours of debugging. So how do we actually measure this? You'll want to wire these specific KPIs directly into your existing dashboards so you can spot any regressions way before your users notice. For first solve latency, aim for under 25 seconds for tokens and under 8 seconds for OCR image captchas. Hitting this means your integration is healthy and you aren't bogged down waiting on retries. Your solver success rate should be 95% or higher, which confirms your inputs are spot on. And critically, your end-to-end acceptance should also be at least 95% post-token. If you hit that target, you know for sure your session matching is working exactly like it should.
Now, when things inevitably do break, this troubleshooting table gives you practical, one-line fixes for the most common support tickets. Getting an error zero balance? Just top up the account and add a balance alert to your dashboard so it doesn't happen again. Seeing an error page URL? Go back and revalidate your page URL and site key against the actual live HTML. Again, no guessing. And if your token keeps getting rejected after the solve, well, now you know the fix. Keep the solve and the form submission locked tightly inside the exact same HTTP session. Setting your job up this way is going to make maintenance an absolute breeze for whoever inherits your code base down the line.
I want to wrap up today with the golden rule of automated jobs. A solved CAPTCHA does not always mean the Defer.run job succeeded. Kind of makes you think, doesn't it? It challenges us to look past that one isolated API call and really examine the entire workflow top to bottom. By validating your inputs, preserving that session context, enforcing strict polling rules, and separating out your metrics, you can transform a really fragile script into a highly resilient system. Take a hard look at your own unattended jobs today. Are they truly built for production, or did you just build them for the demo? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep optimizing, and I'll catch you next time.